welcome back to our weekly Tourismus Namibia live show. As you would know, we weren't able to produce it last week. We didn't air the show because we had a COVID-19 incident at NMH. And just to be on the safe side, we followed our protocols, which fortunately worked out in such a way that most of us, well, the absolute majority of us were not touched by it, which goes to show that you can actually manage it. But yeah, welcome back. Like I said, my name is Frank Steffen. I'm the editor of Allgemeine Zeitung and obviously of the Tourismus Namibia magazine. So let's see this week what we can tell you, but let's first have a look at the marketplace. Good topics for this week. I wanted to do it a bit different this week, so as not to bore you. Talking of COVID-19, clearly we need to have a look at how we can open up our borders. And I know many people are a bit impatient at this stage. We all want our borders to open up again, get the tourism sector going again, and. I must be honest, in this regard, I totally support what the government is doing. Small baby steps, make sure that we know what we're doing. Yes, I know I'm probably opening a can of worms here, but I actually can totally understand that they are first opening the Hosea Kutako International Airport for now. This will be as from the beginning of September, and the government is bent on only allowing a couple of countries access to Namibia. So in other words, I'm sure they're looking at people who've got their protocols in place in their countries, who've got possibly better controls even than Namibia, and so that we can rather learn from them and follow suit, allow bit by bit access into Namibia so that we can learn and build our projects and then see how we extend it to the whole of the country. So it's not my place to do it, but I would think that we maybe need to be just a little bit patient. I'm just glad the government is making the first move to start welcoming back international tourism and visitors from abroad. So let's see where it leads, and hopefully in the long term we can get this properly organized. You will see later on to the point in the interview that we bring you. We've got Romeo Muyunda. I think he's talking more to it as well. Yes, and then the second part that was to me very interesting. The Republican brought an article this week about bottlenose dolphins. I thought that was quite an interesting article. Tursiops is what they are in Latin. I mean, this is the typical dolphin, how each child knows it. That's the shape it should have as far as we're concerned. But what's interesting is the Namibian Dolphin Project in Walfish Bay, or even from Lüderitz and further beyond that. They are quite involved with assisting Stellenbosch University and other sites to actually go and have a look at what our dolphins do. They do studies on their acoustics. They actually have found out that there were 204 unique acoustic communication types that they've recorded, and of those 53 are unique in their own communication style. So whatever it is, I'm not the person who knows how exactly that works, but I find it interesting that Namibia starts taking part in these sort of studies and contributes internationally towards maintaining these animals. Yeah, those are the dolphins. And then finally, possibly not so much tourism, but I still found it is a unique item. Dr. Japie van Zyl. He died this week. Obviously, born and bred Namibian, coming up from Maputo and later going, well, actually staying Uchu and up in Maputo. I actually met his dad years ago. This is a guy who's very busy, and then here you can see this was in Delta School in Windhoek, where the American embassy had actually invited him to give a talk about NASA, where he obviously worked. He stayed in Pasadena, California for the past, for a number of years, worked for 33 years at NASA at the Jet Propulsion Center. And why I took out this photo, I want you to have a look at it. On the left-hand side there in the center, you will see Naukluft Plateau and Gobabeb. I always found that very interesting. He actually told us at a presentation that as scientists working in NASA, whoever is involved in those projects has the right to once in a while name a couple of new sites that they discover on Mars, and that was his pet project. Obviously, he was pretty much involved with all these the studies about Mars. He was involved in the development of some helicopters and stuff there, remote helicopters, remotely controlled helicopters and so on, or craft for that matter. And here, this one I actually took out from a site which is called We Name the Stars .inkleby. And this was interesting because if you go to Google, you can actually have a look at the Okavango Valley. This is the Okavango Valley up at Mars. Now, obviously, I can't tell you where exactly that is, but I just found it interesting that Dr. Japie van Zyl, who passed away this week, was one of those people who can proudly say that he left his mark permanently. Not necessarily that something was named after him on Mars, but he put Namibia on the map, literally on the map on Mars. And I thought this was a sort of interesting bit of news in a week where we've lost two great guys, two great people in Namibia. The one being Dirk Mudge, who obviously was a big contributor towards Namibia's independence in many ways. And then here we see Dr. Japie van Zyl, who really did a lot for mankind in terms of, in his little way, contributing towards the bigger study of universe, and then somehow just leaving his mark for Namibia. So those are our topics for today. Something different for a change. So before we proceed to our destinations, where we talk to Chloe Deer again, let's first have a look into the marketplace. Welcome back. As you can see, Chloe Deer is back in the studio with us. Welcome, Chloe.
Thank you, Frank.
This is actually quite funny, this being the first show for a while now, to suddenly be back, and suddenly you realize you've actually missed this, because it's not as if we are all professional presenters, but somehow it's always nice to sort of show these destinations and introduce people to new sites. And I suddenly found myself for the first time actually missing it. It's quite funny.
No, it is fun, because it almost feels like you're traveling when you discuss all these memories and things like that.
So yes, Chloe has brought along 3 different destination ideas again, obviously still relating to the time when you did the trip from the Cape up to Namibia.
Yeah, I mean, that trip was so full, so we have to like spread them out over weeks to visit. Otherwise we'd have an hour-long discussion on one place. But Paternoster is a popular, getaway for Cape Townians because it's not far from Cape Town at all. But the Cape Columbine Lighthouse is inside the Columbine Reserve, and it's actually the last manned lighthouse in South Africa, and it's still manned today. Okay. And I actually met with the lightkeeper who was stationed at Dustin Island and Pelican Point for a while. So there's that connection with Namibia, which is always, wonderful to have that familiarity.
These guys are quite professionally trained.
I mean, this lighthouse was unlike anything I'd seen before. I mean, impeccably kept, but it's on a very windy outcropping and was built after the Columbine shipwreck in 1829. Because it is a treacherous
where
point.
That name comes from, yeah.
Yeah, it is very treacherous. I mean, the seas are. The actual lighthouse was built in 1936, so it's relatively new, which is why it looks so shiny and well kept. Yeah. But still in operation and different from normal lighthouses because it's not cylindrical, it's almost square in shape. So it's altogether a very interesting, but you get the chance to climb the spiral staircase and actually go into the light bulb itself, which is where I am now, and get a very abstract view of Britannia Bay and the Atlantic Ocean which surrounds you. But what's wonderful about this is that the old lightkeepers' homes have been transformed into guest houses, and so you actually have the opportunity to stay at the lighthouse, which I'm not sure if there's any other.
I wouldn't know of any others.
It's a wonderfully unique way of experiencing it. Obviously, the light would keep you awake until the early hours. That was the lightkeeper, and but it really is quite a stately sculpture, and it's only 5 kilometers from Paternoster itself, deep in the Columbine Reserve, with Titis Bay on the southern side. But there are, which has wonderful camping spots as well. So, I mean, it's remote and a beautiful kind of seashore experience. Yeah. We did once speak about Sea Shacks, which is also in the Columbine Nature Reserve.
Exactly, yeah. That was where you sort of looked onto the bay, wasn't it?
Yeah. And so it all just ties into one another. But seeing where we're positioned on set today, I'm hollering to jump into that water as we sit here.
I'll stay here. And then from there you went on to Meisboskerm.
Yeah, I mean, that's an experience rather than a meal. I mean, it's 2 to 3 hours of traditional Boer course, like for lack of a better description, perched just above the high water line on the coast. And you basically have a 12-course meal where you have traditional waterblommetjie breadie and, yeast-baked bread with farm butter and jam.
Over there.
So this was when it was empty. You have to book in advance. I mean, it's the first open-air restaurant that in South Africa.
It looks nice, huh?
And the banquet that they put on is just unbelievable, with boeremuziek playing and all traditional cook sisters, like I said, waterblommetjie breadie, but all the seafood is directly from the shore in front of you. And so, owing to its name, Meisbos, the traditional herders would have used Meisbos as they migrated with their flock. And so that's what the entire building is made from. And it kind of disappears into the landscape because that's the bush that surrounds you.
Yeah.
But it's an experience that actually, it shouldn't be missed. And it's about 4 kilometers outside of Lambert's Bay en route to Elands Bay. And, booking a table with your whole family and really getting into the
real experience.
I mean, it's actually, these photos aren't doing it justice. They're not actually my photos. These were actually cell phone photos from my whole family who were just snapping away.
Everybody's seeing something that's nice.
Yeah, my grandmother was the funniest. I mean, I think we rolled home at the end of it, but I mean, it was definitely worth it.
Yeah, it really looks nice, huh?
And worth including, especially in December when it's hot and the sunsets are unbelievable. And I don't know, it's a family-run business and it works brilliantly, and it's fine dining at its best. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, on the shoreline.
Yeah, just alone seeing the crayfish gets me hungry already. Yeah. Yeah, and then we're coming back to Namibia,
Yeah.
something different for a change.
Yeah, Tourismus Castle has always been something that that I've been drawn to. I think it's because of its kind of eccentric storyline, you know, built in 1909, and it kind of was a love story dream, you know, and it's kind of the last thing you'd expect to find in the middle of the desert is like a pseudo medieval looking castle made of sandstone from the surrounding quarries. But inside of it is what I found so incredible and hadn't seen much footage of before, but it's filled with antiques that from all over the world, which were shipped to Luderitz Harbour and then transported by 300 kilometers by ox wagon to make this, you know, this dream come to life of this
I'm
fortress.
just glad to see, these are new photos, so somebody's somewhere along the line pulled the handbrake and said, guys, we've got to get this in order, because I remember that in the 90s I went there and I couldn't believe how much had been stolen, how much had been removed. So if I don't know, is it part of NWR now?
Yeah, it's still NWR.
And so I'm glad that they've actually made a first move to get the stuff in order again. I don't know about, I mean, surely you can't revive everything. I mean, surely not.
For the most part, the furniture looked well oiled and well kept. I mean, you have 19th century antiques in there, which I certainly...
But that is the important part to me, because way back it wasn't in good shape anymore. I mean, the rooms you could hardly use and so on.
Yeah, and they've actually redone the courtyard of rooms which you're able to stay in and really get a sense of living this kind of otherworldly life. It was originally a stud farm. They built it and had studs, thoroughbreds from Australia and England, and there's that story that, you know, those are the lost wild horses, which, you know, has been debated here and there. But
because you've got two trains of thought. The one say they come from Duvisip and probably wandered down south, but it's quite far down south, because the others is obviously that they were part of the horses that were left by the Schutztruppe when they were finally losing their battles in the south.
I'm of the opinion that it's a mixture of everything.
Probably.
I mean, because it's just, you know, this was abandoned once he died in the Battle of Somme. So
it's actually quite funny. I mean, he comes to Namibia, builds this tremendous place, then marries an American woman. She remains behind, and he goes to fight in Europe. I mean,
my favorite is the legend of how he returned to Europe dressed as a woman in order to, you know, to disguise. Yeah. And, you know, I wouldn't put it past him. I mean, this oak is built, he's built this fortress in the middle of nowhere. I mean, I think he's quite capable and is eccentric enough to do that.
Don't be fooled by it, because I think what we need to realize that in Namibia in those years, there were a couple of guys who did real funny things for us today, which they thought is they're bringing big civilization to Africa. Whether you like it or not, that's the idea that they had in their head. I mean, that's why we've got castles in Windhoek, and that's why you've got all types of things being built out there. I mean, the ghost house, as you go down to Swakopmund, it's a huge house out there where you think, why would you build something like that?
I haven't seen it.
But these guys, they've done it, they did it. And so if you look at Kolmanskop, surely.
Yeah.
I mean, if you look at those 10-pin bowling alleys they've got there.
I don't think we realize the lifestyle those people lived.
And I mean, it seems as if these guys had money and they did it, and they built and thought this was like for the next 100 years.
And it lasts. I mean, the structures they built are still going strong today, so just shows.
Yeah. Anyway, so thank you for bringing us.
Thank you. Always enjoy
And
coming.
she's been around, so in the next show we'll surely bring you a couple of nice photos. She actually told me that these were some of her best photos ever made. So let's.
I'm very excited to share them.
Yeah. No, it's good stuff. Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you, Frank.
Thank you. See you. welcome. As you can see, we've got a special guest here today. Hi, Romeo.
Hi, Frank.
Romeo Muyunda, he's the Public Relations Officer of the Ministry of Environment, Forestry, and then Tourism, obviously. So welcome in the studio. Let's see what you can tell us about. The reason why I invited Romeo is not so much to get into all the nitty-gritty of the politics of what's going on in COVID time. I just wanted to find out a bit more about how this whole thing is working at this point in time. I think many of the people are very impatient about sudden results. Some people believe there's a magic wand to return to some form of normalcy, but this is going to take time. And I suppose you can actually see what the minister does and how much he does.
Yes, COVID-19 took all of us by surprise. It's something that no one in the world was prepared for. And of course, unfortunately, the tourism sector was affected as a result. We have seen people losing their jobs, loss of income, and that has been a serious concern for the ministry. And accordingly, we started to look at how we can possibly revive tourism without actually jeopardizing the health of our people. And consultations started then, and also just looking at what is happening elsewhere in the world. What are they doing? How are they making sure that tourism continues in the presence of COVID? So we have been doing that. I think, of course, like you've said, the minister has been at the forefront. We have been consulting, we have been studying the situation to see what works and what doesn't work. Yeah, but here we are, I think our first try into the opening the country for tourism. It's an initial step, but we want to see how it will go.
Yeah, and it really is only the Hosea Kutako International Airport and none other. That's what the minister said, isn't it?
Yes, the idea is to have people come through only Hosea Kutako International Airport. Also to have them, because we don't want to use the word quarantined. We want to use for them to stay 7 days at the first point, which is the place where they are booked. So they will stay there for 7 days, and a test is going to be conducted there. If it's negative, then they proceed from there to wherever they would want to go in the country, just to enjoy the country.
Yeah. Is there any idea that, I'm just putting an idea out there, I was often wondering, you know, with the situation being what it is, have some of the people actually thought about the possibility of turning Etosha, for example, into an isolation unit all in all, and that way have people going there and coming in and out in a controlled manner, and that, because I think obviously one of the greatest concerns is that people say, but who will spend 7 days in one destination and then still enjoy their holidays? Now, by pure chance, yesterday I spoke to people from the German embassy, and they reckon, yes, there are quite a number of people who actually want to do it. So I think it's obviously not the numbers that we had before, but by the same token, we always know that this needs small steps. So is there any sort of idea in that direction?
The idea for now is that when we are saying that you are going to stay at your first point, we are saying that, for example, you booked in Halali, Etosha. That means the areas around Halali, you can always do activities there. You go around, you go see visit the water holes and come back. But you are not only allowed to proceed beyond that. Let's say, for example, it is on a game farm. You are allowed to do activities on that game farm before you proceed elsewhere in the country. So that is what we are saying, and I think it ties with the idea that you have that we have Etosha as a holding facility. I think that is it is the same idea that we are saying that your first point, you can still go out. We are not restricting you to go out within the boundaries your first accommodation.
So that's why you said it's not really quarantine. It's more trying to keep isolated as much as possible, and that way do it.
Yes. So you can still enjoy whatever is offered at that facility where you are. You are not locked indoors, it just needs to be made sure that the provisions of the regulations in terms of preventative measures are in place. And this is what we are also busy engaging with tour operators to know that we need the provisions of the regulations adhered to. And that is why we have also, through this initiative plan, we are also encouraging, or we are also going through a process in which we are going to certify tour operators.
Okay, so that you know they've got their systems in place, and it's a matter of coming in and getting out, because I think that's one of the greatest concerns that many operators had is, I mean, if you now sit there, today 5 leave and another 5 come in, but you've also got another 5 that have been there for a while now. You know, so clearly there must be some form of procedure to make sure that they don't necessarily interact. Otherwise the whole point is lost, is it not?
Yes. So that is the procedures that we are putting in place. Of course, like I've said, we are not working in isolation with this one. We are working with the Ministry of Health, and they are advising us, especially on the health protocols of things. How do we make sure that the safety of others is also observed? So there is also other partners that we are working together with, including the Ministry of the Ministry is International Relations, just to ensure that
the whole nine yards.
immigration and even the law enforcement agencies, just to ensure that there is adherence. So I think, like I've said, it's an initial step. But of course, we believe it should be a step in the right direction, considering that we get the support that we need. And really, we believe this is going to be good for tourism. There is a task team that was established, spearheaded by the Ministry of Environment, Forestry and Tourism. And of course, this task team is still going to look into what is possible for the future. So we are going to study this initial step. And then
it becomes a bit of a schooling exercise.
Yes, and then we continue to see if there is a need to upgrade until perhaps to a time where we can even open the borders safely for tourism.
Because I mean, surely in the long run, the idea is to welcome people back from South Africa, from Botswana, Zambia, wherever they come from.
Yes. So we don't want to rush into it, and then at the end of the day, we have issues in terms of rising numbers. We cannot control the spread of this virus. So we are doing it step by step to see, okay, if this works, then how do we safely upgrade to the next level? So
I'm quite sure you sort of doing this thing piece by piece, bit by bit, while talking to the likes of Han and Finata and Taza and whoever. So they're partners at the table, I suppose.
Yes, the private sector is seriously part of this. Like I've said, we have been doing a lot of consultation, and we even the initial revival strategy. The tourism bodies like Fenata Han has been very part of this. They have come up and given us their suggestions. We have also NTB, which is our marketing arm. They have also been very part of this. So we have really gone extensively in consulting, and of course we also continue to open our doors throughout, so that if there are any more ideas, we can always consider them and see how we go forward.
I suppose the minister sometimes finds themselves between a rock and a hard place, you know, with the rest of the ministries sort of breaking him out and telling him, hey, you need to do this slowly, especially the Ministry of Health. And then on the other hand, you find all the tour operators and tourism activists who say, guys, come on, we need to do this, because everybody's obviously worried about their survival.
Yes, I think tourism, I think maybe most people, especially in the tourism sector, perhaps they felt we are on different sides because for the past few months when tourism was closed, we have seen people, going on demonstrations, handing petitions to the minister for him to open up but we are on their side. Actually, there's nothing that we would want more than to see tourism thrive in this country. But of course, we have also made it clear that for as much as we sympathize with the tourism or the tour operators in this country in terms of the losses they are incurring due to the lack of tourists coming from outside, we would want them to understand that the situation is not as easy as
just opening up.
Yeah, just opening up.
But talking about survival, I mean, the other day, you guys were fortunate enough to get that huge support from Germany in terms of getting the conservancies going. And clearly, outside COVID, there is still activities which you guys are involved with. Do you want to tell us a bit more about that? What is planned at the moment? What are your master plans in terms of getting tourism developed, number one, in the Northeast? I still, and I've put it to the minister before, you remember you were there, I'm one of the big promoters of the idea that we should improve tourism in Ovamboland, in actually all the 4O regions, because I think there's a huge potential in that area for people to simply relax. Yes, there might not be hundreds of elephants every second corner, but there's so much else you can do. And so what have you guys got on your plans to get that sort of whole tourism offer extended and developed?
Well, I think what we have done, first and foremost, is that we Namibia, the Ministry of Environment, Forestry and Tourism, its job or its role in tourism is actually to provide an enabling environment. So we have done that through the legislation that we have developed, the policies to ensure that both the tourist and the operator, they get the value for their money or for their time. So also we have developed what we call the tourism growth strategy. So with that, there are a few ideas there in terms of what type of investment Namibia needs. And of course, like you have said, that the northern parts of the country is one of those investments that people can really make to attract tourists that can just go there and relax. Recently, I don't know if you know about it, there is a lodge that we are building north of Etosha, just outside there. It's not really by the ministry, but it is a conservancy in partnership with a private investor.
We actually have spoken about it.
Yes. So all of that and the idea of conservancies is just to enhance also tourism, especially in communal areas such as the northern parts of the country. So people must really take up these opportunities, and we are working with NTB so that they market the investment opportunities that exist, the investment opportunities that has not been taken up yet. And it's not only in the northern parts, the northeast as well, in the Zambezi. There's so much opportunity. There's so much opportunities that hasn't been taken up.
Because that would be nice, wouldn't it? My argument is always, if you look at Etosha, for example, there basically is not a neighboring farm that is not somehow also involved in some form of conservancy and or guest farming and or lodge, whatever it is. And it would be nice if we can extend that sort of around the top as well, where the northern parts start getting involved and also having their little game parks and whatever, and even if it is a hunting farm, yes, surely. I mean, if it works in the south, why shouldn't it work in the north?
Exactly.
It just needs to be controlled and done properly.
Exactly. But also, what I'd like to add is that we really okay, Namibia's tourism, for example, is now based on the things that you have mentioned, which is our wildlife, our landscapes, and to a very little extent, we doing cultural tourism, and I think.
But there is growth.
Yes, but there is a bit of growth, and I think for places like the northern areas, this is the idea that should really sell. People would like to experience the cultural diversity of that area. So I think this is something that we really need to
enhance, really.
enhance, yes.
Yeah, it's my argument always, and after I've said it on the show a couple of times already, you know, why should I pack my car and drive to Kenya to see Maasai?
Exactly.
If I have Ovahimba culture right in front of us, or for that matter, even going up to right to the north. I remember once entering a village right up in the north nearby Ruakana, and there was this little child coming to me, touching my hair, and then the mom said, sorry, it's the first white man he's ever seen. So it was quite funny.
Yes,
in that
exactly,
really, yeah.
exactly.
So we should not always think that because Windhoek is pretty much, if we want to call it that, a westernized town, we shouldn't think that the whole of Namibia is like that. Many of the Sun people are still like that, and no matter where you go, there's still many people who keep to their traditional ways.
Yeah, I know. You are right. You'll be surprised how many Namibians would want to go out there and see and witness other cultures, but yet we don't even know our own cultures.
Well, that's the thing.
Yes, we don't even know our own cultures. If you ask me, I wouldn't know even how many dialects are there in northern areas.
Yeah.
For example, I wouldn't even know what tribe this person is. So it is really so much discouraging to see that Namibians would really want to go and see other people's cultures without actually knowing our own country. And I think we are trying to really encourage domestic tourism. I've seen even, I've observed even when tourism was still closed, people were advocating to open the borders so that they can go and visit other countries for leisure. And I'm saying,
what have you done around here?
What have you done around here? Yeah. So I think these are the kind of things that we are really working on so that we encourage domestic tourism. Apart from that, you have mentioned the conservancies. There is a facility that we have launched back in May, in which we have now attracted more than, I think, 6 million for conservancies just to assist them
I actually saw that update now. Yeah.
Yes. So we have already given that money to the conservancies for the first quarter, and we are now working on the second quarter so that the conservancies can continue to do their activities. We need them to conserve our wildlife as well as our natural resources. They have been part of the successes that Namibia has recorded in terms of wildlife recoveries. So we really need the conservancies.
And that brings us to the final point, forestry. Obviously a new challenge. Not really a new challenge, a renewed challenge.
Yeah,
it used to be part of yours, wasn't it?
Yes. Yeah, forestry, we have welcomed forestry. I think we have seen a number of controversies and so on in the past few years with the timber and so on. But of course, we have welcomed forestry to the ministry. We are now working on on policies and so on, so that we make sure that not only should forestry or forestry resources be protected, but also benefit Namibians. So we are working on legislations. I think one of them is to review the Forestry Act. Also to make sure that Namibia's timber industry growth, we have seen a lot of timber being exported in raw material, going outside Namibia. And so recently we have come out, the minister has come out and said, in accordance with the law, that there is not going to be an export of any raw timber from Namibia. And that is what is going on now. We are implementing that. We are trying to really expand our local industry, so that it contributes not only to the economy, but also,
and it becomes controlled, really.
Yes,
that's the main thing.
Yeah, the main thing, we want control in it. There has been so much chaos in it, people doing it illegally. There were concerns also of people, harvesting timber without the environmental impact assessment, some without permits. So it is really just to bring control
and make sure that we've got it in the long run.
Yes,
sustainable development,
utilization, and as well as development.
Thank you very much, Romeo, for making time, and hopefully we can repeat this some other time when we talk about the good news that tourism has improved again.
Thank you very much for having me.
Okay, thanks. Well, that's it from Romeo Muyunda from MEFT. Right, and just remember, we've got the NTE coming up, the Namibia Tourism Expo. It will be from the 4th to the 7th of November. People, it will happen, no matter what. And it is very important that you just remember this thing is going to happen, and we will promote local tourism. We will promote tourism to Namibia. So it's very important. We've got our Tourist of the Year competition sorted. You will remember that last time we showed you who the final candidates are. Now, obviously, with the lockdown, we had to sort of adjust and first find a way in which we can get these people sorted to actually be able to do what we want them to do, and that is to record their live experiences as they go out to the various lodges. But never mind that. That will happen. There's no doubt about it, and when it happens, we will keep you informed. But what is important that you do understand, whether you are a visitor to the NTE, whether you're just somebody who actually takes part in it or visits just for the day, to us the important part is that this year it's about virtual tourism in more ways than one. Not only because we've now suddenly decided on account of COVID-19 that we need to do that, we would have done it anyway. People who were involved with us before the time know that part of the big thing that we wanted to introduce at the NTE this year is that people who've got lodges or any type of guest house or hotels, whatever it is, tours, you name it, these people will actually be able to tell us at the show what they are doing live. So part of it was that we would have had a GoPro at the various lodges, whoever wants to take part, and that the viewer or the visitor to the NTE can actually follow live, see what's happening at that site right there and then. And we will do that no matter what. So if the NTE happens to work out as we hope it to be, in terms of you being able to visit, in terms of us doing what we need to do, bring people together, introduce suppliers to lodges, lodges to suppliers, and vice versa. Once we get that sorted, the rest is just something that will happen. So if COVID does its thing, don't worry, we'll still be there, we'll still do the NTE. So that to us is very important. Please realize that, and please support us in that, because at the end of the day, this is about supporting us so that we can support you. Thank you. Yeah, and that brings us to the end. Romeo obviously just giving us an oversight. I didn't particularly aim at putting him on the spot. This is not a political show. This is just to give you as viewer the opportunity to see what the different role players in tourism, what they think of the different subjects, how they approach them, and how they work together at the end of the day, hopefully opening up Namibia in the long run again. So not in the long run, in the short run, hopefully. And as we can see, Hosea Kotako, as said earlier, is part of that plan. So before we depart, today I did not have a reader's photo. I had a picture of the week, which I took out from our archives. And this is just to show you that up in the north, really, there's a lot to offer already. This is this is a traditional village up at Tsumkwe, where the San people actually still show you how they lived and live. And these are sort of things that you can do up in the north, and they're, to my mind, not advertised enough. Tsumkwe, most people do not even know where it is. It's just roughly, what is it, about 80 kilometers north of Tsumeb. And you know, these are different areas which you can visit in Namibia, because obviously this is at Tsumkwe, you get other sites further to the east at Tsinsabis and so on, but they're all worth visiting, and you don't always need to stick to the standard route. If you go to Tsumkwe, you can go up to Okongo, or you can choose, you can also go further up to Nkuru and access Kavangoland from that side. So there's always a way in which you can see different people, different styles, do something different. You can even turn off from Tsumkwe and go back towards Etosha again. There's a very nice gravel road leading over to Etosha from that side. So just think different, do something different. Don't always follow the same routes once again and again and again. I think our country has got a lot to offer. And with that thought, I'll leave you for this week. Enjoy your weekend, and hopefully you'll remain healthy. Thank you.